What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? It's a beautiful Saturday because we just had football I woke up to football. I'm going to go to bed to football. And the Los Angeles Rams don't officially clinch the division. They win 10 games. Obviously, regardless what happens on Sunday, they control their own destiny. But get a kind of crazy win. The Arizona Cardinals have lost a lot of crazy games as well. We'll discuss. I honestly thought about after the Bengals beat Denver in overtime to keep their season alive. There was a period if they got a first down, they could win it with a tie. In terms of Denver, if they tied, they would have clinched the playoff spot. If that would have happened, I might have just scrapped the Rams game and gone right after. So that was nuts. I mean, the final stretch of that game, the whole game. I mean, it felt like a playoff game. And then this morning, definitely did not feel like a playoff game. New England people were leaving. The Chargers, I don't even know. I think the final score was 40-7. It was a complete ass kicking. So we'll dive into a little bit of football that happened today. Also, Colorado just got destroyed by BYU. But unlike Cam Ward, who came out at halftime, we'll address that because I got a quick thought. We'll end on that. Shedeur and Travis Hunter. I look up. I barely even watched the Colorado game just because I was watching the NFL game. But I looked up with about 3 minutes left, and they were still in the game down a lot. I mean, they were down almost 30 points. So we'll dive into some football. But first, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, the official ticketing app of this podcast. You want to go to any game in 2025? You want to go to any concert? You want to go to any comedy show? You want to go to an event? Get outside, have some fun. Do it with the official ticketing app, Game Time. Been using them forever. Doesn't get any easier. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code John for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account and redeem the code John, John, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets. Lowest prices guaranteed. Okay. Let's start with Sean McVay and the Rams, who beat the Cardinals and go to 10-6. I think two things can be true. The way they started this year, just like the way they started last year. I said it within the last month. Sean McVay does not get enough credit for having like a Mike Tomlin-like quality of handling adversity. Shit hits the fan. All of a sudden you're like, what? The Rams 1-4, 3-6, boom, double-digit wins. And it is, these last 2 years are worth their weight in gold to his resume. Obviously, once you win a Super Bowl, you become a legendary coach, especially when you're his age. And if you want to, you can coach for 30, 35, 40 more years. But these last couple years to me has defined how great of a coach he is. It really is impressive. And I understand they had injuries, but they found themselves in a hole. What they did is they didn't keep digging. They dropped the shovel and they found their way out. And all of a sudden they're going to the playoffs again. Not officially going to the playoffs as I'm recording this. I promise you the Rams will be in the playoffs. Pretty confident on that. And maybe by the end of tomorrow, based on some strength of schedule rules, they will be officially in and they can get hats and t-shirts on Monday morning when they come to the office. Last year, though, down the stretch, when they were rattling off a bunch of wins, I think they went 7-1 heading into the playoffs. They looked like a well-oiled machine. Offensively, they were awesome. And Puka Nacua had become a star by then. Well, he's even better now in 2024. Every time you look up, he's making a play. Every time the game ends, you check the box score, it's like 10 for 120, 11 for 97. I mean, the guy's a machine. Breaking tackles, tough catches. He's a badass. But their offense is off. It is not working. And I don't know, like Cooper Kupp, who was injured last year, who in theory is healthy right now, but had one catch tonight, had 3 catches yesterday, or I guess not yesterday, but last week against the Jets, did not have a catch against the 49ers. So they're basically a one-man band in the passing game. Luckily, that one man is one of the best receivers in the league. And they're just not an explosive offense right now. So this team going into the playoffs, who is going to be the 3 seed and host more than likely the Packers. Like last year, I thought they could make a run, even though they were playing the Lions, and hell, they almost won that game. They are not playing like that right now. Now their defense, their young front is excellent. They have a physicality to them. Obviously, their DBs tonight made some great plays. I mean, the pick at the end by Ahkello Witherspoon, former 49er, awesome play. Little unlucky for the Cardinals, who felt like they were driving. I felt like they were going to win the game. Before Kyler let off that Nolan Ryan fastball and hit Trey McBride's head, listen, really tough play. Timing just a little off. I had full confidence. I'm like, the Rams are going to lose this game. Because when all else failed, I thought Kyler would run around and run in the end zone. Because that is a play in that situation. Once you get close to the goal line, everyone's running toward the pylons in the back of the end zone. All of a sudden, he keeps the play alive, and then he jolts in the end zone. That's what I thought was going to happen. So for them to lose it on that first down, hit Trey in the head, man, that's a tough way to lose. And also a lucky way to win. Now, you get credit. You find ways to win. The Chiefs did half the season. They're 15-1. This team has done it countless times over the last couple months, and they're 10-6. But you go back in this month, you remove the Buffalo game, in which, I don't know, it was one of the finest performances you'll ever see. They scored like 100 points in the game. They were unstoppable on offense. If you go the previous week against the Saints, they look like shit. They ended up winning that game 21-14. But for a large portion of the game, I think it was like 7-7. They were not playing well. The 49er game was atrocious. I mean, their offense was, in the first half, I think Matt Stafford had, forget, was it 4 yards or 4 completions? It's as bad of an offensive performance as you're going to get. Last week, as a guy that had money on the Jets. Now, I gave them a little bit of a pass last week, coming off the massive win, even though it wasn't a good-looking win offensively, against the 49ers, going across the country, early morning game, against Aaron Rodgers, who looked a little bit better. I wasn't going to put that much stock into the game. But then when you look at that game, you look at the 49er game, you look at the Saints game, and then you look at tonight, you're like, I don't know what's going on. But how could you pick this team despite being at home if they got to play the Packers in the first round? Which last year, I thought the way they were playing, it's like, could this team win the NFC? I mean, so both teams storming into the playoffs. Last year, they were a wild card, obviously, because the 49ers were the 1 seed. This year, they're going to host a playoff game, and I don't like them nearly as much, even though I have so much respect and admiration for the job the coach did. But I don't know if it's Stafford's age. Something's just off. I can't quite put my finger on it. They got health in terms of their offensive pieces, but maybe it's Cooper Kupp's age. Maybe Stafford, just at this age, is a little off. Obviously, he's still good, but how many drives, and maybe there's a Stafford thing, but since he's been on the Rams, I can count just countless times when he could have thrown multiple picks on a drive, and then it ends in a touchdown. You're like, and maybe he gets credit for this because his arm's so strong. It's like a pitcher who throws 99, misses his spot, but you still swing and miss. It's like, yeah, well, I throw 99. If I threw 93, that ball might be in the left field bleachers, but I throw hard. And maybe that's a little bit of Stafford because balls go through guys' hands, but man, I don't know. The defense is playing their balls off. Every other play, it feels like on passing downs, 8s running around in the backfield. Fisk and Jared Verse have been just fantastic draft picks. Their DBs make plays. Even the pick they had on the Kyler bomb, which I think Kyler becomes a... Listen, Jonathan Gannon, having this team this competitive with their talent is remarkable. It's really an excellent coaching staff or job by the staff of Gannon and his 2 coordinators. So Rallis and Petzing, like those, they're, I think, the 2 youngest coordinator combo in the NFL. The bald dude, Petzik, that's awesome, and Rallis, who's I think like 33, 34 years old, former linebacker in college, and I'm pretty sure he's the youngest coordinator, definitely a guy that actually calls plays in the league. Their team is not that talented, especially their defense. But I think a lot of people go, is Kyler a franchise quarterback? And he's kind of an enigma because he's clearly not a top 6 or 7 guy, but he's clearly better than a lot of guys, and his talent is really evident. but on a series to series basis, you never know what you're going to get. Obviously, the pick, Trey McBride, like, I don't even know if that's anyone's fault. It's kind of a freak play. And then the bomb on the previous drive where Marvin leaped and it was just, I don't know, off by what, a foot? But he makes some throws to the sideline. Obviously, his running ability, some of his explosive playability, but then he makes, not necessarily tonight, but just throughout the season, definitely the last like month, some terrible interceptions, terrible decisions. But to me, he's not going anywhere. Like, he's going to be their quarterback next year. And if I was them, like if I was part of the front office, if I owned the team, I'd just be like, let's keep building. Eventually, we'll try to get this team good enough. If we can get out of the contract, if we can move on, we will pivot. But like, Kyler Murray is going to be their quarterback next year. And you could do a lot worse. And by all accounts, they like the guy. He's changed from the guy that got the Call of Duty clause in his contract and matured. No one's considering the guy like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady from a work ethic standpoint, but clearly it's not an issue like it was. People nitpick his sulking on the sideline. Like, yeah, that's not the best body language, but he's going to be their starting quarterback next year. I just keep drafting guys, keep building this team because they got a long way to go. They have so many fucking holes. It's crazy. For them to end up, if they win next week with 8 wins, they play the 49ers, so who knows? They could definitely win that game. That's an excellent coaching job by Jonathan Gannon. If I was a Cardinal fan, I'd be kind of excited. Just like, let's keep adding pieces and just see. We've seen Kyler on a really talented team before, get double-digit wins and be a playoff team. Now, is he ever taken you far? I would say based on what we've seen so far, no. But he's definitely good enough if your team is good enough for you to be competitive. Hell, they've been really competitive this year for the most part with, a roster that can't be ranked that high relative to NFL teams. It's the most wonderful time of year for getting in on all the hoops, football, and hockey action at the DraftKings Sportsbook. It's the season of giving, and we're being gifted college football and basketball, pro football and basketball, and pro hockey too, almost 24/7. So many games every day, so many opportunities to place your first bet. Try betting on something simple, like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and place your bet. And here's a gift for all new customers. Bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. When you bet, just $5. Happy holidays from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Bengals, Denver. I think we got to set the scene at the end of the game in regulation. Once Brown hits the ground to try to run out the clock, obviously they get unlucky when he gets injured. And they have to call a timeout, right, for based on the injury for runoff or it's not runoff, but the rule is when they call a Bengal timeout. So the Denver Broncos get their timeout back. So they have a timeout. It's second down, right? Well, you get 2 more downs. Well, even if they waste a timeout, if you kneel twice, you will run 40 seconds off, and there was like a $1.20 on. So they will get the ball back, assuming you hit the field goal, which, as we found out in overtime, was no lock, with about 40 seconds to go and no timeouts, and have to drive, I would say, to get themselves feel comfortable with like a 55-yard field goal, like several first downs. Instead, he hits the ground to try to run out the clock. Again, no one's fault. He gets injured. The Bengals are forced to use a timeout. Not because Zach Taylor does, but that's league rules, and Denver gets it back. But then they go for a touchdown on the next drive. On the next play. And obviously Burrow scores, does the gritty, and they take the lead. You give the ball back to Sean Payton with like a $1.25 and a timeout. That's insane. Like, that's just, I couldn't even fathom what was going on there. It made no sense. It was crazy because in the NFL, the clock doesn't stop after a first down. So with 40 seconds and no timeout, we guard the sideline. If you get caught in bounds, you're wasted 20 seconds guaranteed. And if I tackle you in bounds multiple times, there's no way you can get the kicker on the field. It ain't going to happen. You would be in major, major trouble. The clock management at the end of that game, and I get Denver got their timeout, and I haven't even seen Zach Taylor's comments. I'm sure he will say that influenced their decision to run the quarterback sneak with Burrow, it's insane. I can't get behind it. I really can't. And even that drive, earlier in that drive, and I get they don't have a kicker they're totally comfortable with. They're just throwing nonstop. And on second down, Burrow misses Jamar Chase, and it just stops the clock. And Denver didn't have to use a timeout. Now, on the next play, he hits him, but it was like, am I living in the Twilight Zone? What are you guys doing? Run out the clock here. Run out the clock. Do not give them back with any timeout or time left, especially with timeouts. I didn't understand it. And listen, Zach Taylor takes a lot of shit. In a weird way, he doesn't get any credit despite Joe Burrow having like one of the great seasons of all time. But your job as a head coach is more than the offensive coordinator. You got to have some game management skills. And it feels like Zach Taylor does not. Now, they ended up winning the game because he's not going to win the MVP because his team's going to win 8 or 9 games, but clearly one of the best players on the planet who is playing out of his fucking mind. And here's the thing with Burrow, especially today. The Denver Bronco defense somehow turned into the 85 Bears for most of this year. They lead the league in sacks. All their DBs fly around and hit. Their team speed is fantastic. They sacked Joe Burrow like 7 times a day. And it felt like he got hit double that. He was getting crunched play after play after play. And one thing with Burrow, unlike definitely Josh Allen, obviously Lamar, even Herbert, like he plays a lot like, you know what I realized? A lot like Andrew Luck. He will sit in a lot like the old school quarterbacks, the Phillip Rivers, young Tom, Payton, those pocket guys that will sit in. Now he'll move a little bit more, but he wants to throw the ball from within the pocket. So he'll wait like till the last split second, throw a dart that just hits a guy in stride as he's getting crunched. It's like, Joe. And I don't blame him. I respect it. And that's why he's such a great player. And today, I mean, against one of the better secondaries in the league and obviously the best pass rush in the league, he was 39 of 49, 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, they played an extra 10 minutes of the game, but still, he was essentially the game-winning throw. I guess he threw a game-winning touchdown to Higgins, but the play before, 2 plays before, when he hits Higgins down the sideline, that's as good as you get. Like, it doesn't get any better than that throw. And you talk about a guy, and this is what you want in sports, and this is why when we nitpick, like, how much should Purdy get versus Dak and Tua, it's like, we're just arguing these second-tier guys till we're blue in the face. If you don't have one of those guys, like, you're just not going to win that big, right? Like, that's what a max quarterback looks like. That is exactly what it looks like. Hell, I love Justin Herbert. I do. And I would take Justin Herbert on my team. But not over that. Because even today, like, Justin missed a couple throws, and I get it's cold, but it's like that. He is, like, we don't talk about him being the top dog, but you're watching today, you're like, this guy is a bad fucking dude, man. He is this is everything you'd want when you draft a quarterback high, and then you give him the unlimited money. You never, ever think twice. If I ever have to think twice or sit down at the table and have a conversation with the owner, with my assistant GM, with my coaches, and argue it out, then it's like we're probably paying a guy that we're not comfortable paying. But Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, those teams have never once thought twice since pulling the trigger. And now that Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers have a real coach, it'll never cross the Chargers' mind ever. Those guys are in a different world than everybody else. They're like playing a different sport. Can you imagine having like a $50 million quarterback if you're a GM, if you're a coach, if you're a fan, and knowing you don't have one of those guys? Now, luckily, the NFC guys are kind of lucky that basically they're all in the AFC. But imagine being in the AFC and not having one of those guys. Godspeed. Good luck, because you're never winning dick. Now, Bo Nix, he threw a bad pick late in the game. It was hard to tell. Like, it looked like his arm got hit, but after he released it, he just made a bad throw. It got picked off. But I thought in the second half, beside that throw, he was excellent. Threw a beautiful ball in the to the back right pylon to Sutton for a touchdown. His one thing I heard nonstop from a lot of people covering the draft was, his physical skills are just kind of meh. Was physical skills meh because you're just watching him throw bubble screens and stuff in college? That's kind of their offense. Or do you not think he has a strong arm? Because I remember after me and Colin talked about it, I watched him and I was like, I think he's pretty physically gifted. And today he threw a ball 70 yards, hit the guy in stride. He looked like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen making that throw. And then the throw he made on 4th and 1, you talk about physical skills, keeping the play alive with his feet, throwing a perfect ball to give his guy, Mims, who I really like. I mean, watching this guy the second half of the season, talk about a playmaker between the two DBs, what an incredible play. And that gets back to Zach Taylor for fucking up the end of the game. They never should have had that opportunity. There shouldn't have been that much time on the clock to even, it's like, what are you guys doing? But we already discussed that. But like Bo Nix, if you're a Denver Bronco fan, I know today it sucks because you had a chance to solidify it. I still believe big picture. Next week you're playing Kansas City. They have absolutely nothing to play for. Now, their Carson Wentz and whoever actually is playing is going to play hard. And Carson Wentz with Andy Reid, they're going to try to win the game. But if you can't beat Carson Wentz, who hasn't played a game all season long in Denver, you don't belong in the playoffs. I believe as we sit here, the Denver Broncos will win that game. But it's football. We've seen crazier. It's all the pressure's on them. Take care of business. If they play like they did, especially in the second half today, they will win that game. All the guys are sitting. Obviously, Chris Jones didn't play Wednesday, but he's not going to play in that game. No chance Kelsey plays. No chance Mahomes plays. No chance Hopkins plays. No chance Trent McDuffie plays. I mean, these guys will be in sweats. They will not even dress. So I think the Denver Broncos, who I don't want to say kicking themselves because they were down late in the game. It was just remarkable that they even forced overtime. I guess they had their opportunities in overtime. They got a first stop on the first series, got the ball back. But it's hard. I mean, it's just I don't remember a quarterback start to finish in a year who was as polarizing as he was in the draft because, one, a lot of people didn't think he should be a first-round pick, let alone a top 15 pick. A lot of people thought Sean Payton was really arrogant about making the selection. And then early on, it was rocky. You're watching him like, is this going to be good enough? Is this going to work? This young guy has improved so much. Now, he's benefited. He has a great coach, right, who's won at a high clip in the NFL for a long time. He has a fantastic defense. But he's throwing to Sutton, really good player, Mims, Franklin, and Javonte Williams. I mean, he's not exactly, Rod Smith and Ed McCaffrey and Terrell Davis are out there, and Shannon Sharp. So his offense, we'll look back in a couple years, this will be the worst group of offensive pieces he will have. So I think what he's doing is just fantastic. He has his level of growth this season. If I was a Broncos fan, listen, I don't know if he's going to be Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. I would bet against it as being like a top 5 guy. But he sure looks like a guy that in a couple years could be a top 10 NFL quarterback. And obviously he has plays like an elite NFL quarterback. But just start to finish putting games together, I don't think this rookie season could have gone that much better than it has for Bo Nix. In terms of the positivity, and everyone's going to be so excited next year as this team gets better and better, as they move on from some of their dead money from Russell. But that game was bananas. It was thrilling. It really was. It was freaking awesome. Partly because some of the crazy plays that were made, Joe Burrow just playing like he was like out of a video game. The absolute buffoonery by Zach Taylor at the end of the game. It's like, how are you doing this? If they would have lost the game, and I'm not pro or anti, I'm kind of indifferent. Like sometimes I've watched them this year and I've understand the Bengals, but you also got to give him credit for the offense playing really well. I bet some of you would say it's Burrow, Chase, and Higgins at this point in time. Anyone could coach him, and maybe that's true. If he would have lost that game, if Denver would have won it on overtime, you cannot bring him back. I don't care how cheap the owner is. There's no way he could ever coach for the Bengals ever again. You could fire him before week 18. Obviously, their season would have been over, but he could not have returned. It would have been over. Unofficially and officially for him. He would have had to go. But they pull a game out of their ass. And, I mean, they were a 3rd and 9 away from the Denver Broncos just kneeling it to tie to ending their season. But instead, they have this crazy win with T. Higgins in the corner of the end zone. I can't imagine how just the jubilation of everyone leaving that old. I have been to that stadium, and it's old and shitty, but it is just there's a purity to it. It's just about football when you walk in there. We're not. This isn't Jerry's world, right? There ain't these big suites everywhere. This is blue collar crowd coming to watch Joe, and they got to win. So props to them. Props to the Broncos too. What a great season, honestly. Everyone thought that the Broncos, and let's face it, the Chargers were going to suck. It would be the Chargers are in the playoffs. It would be stunning to me if the Broncos are not. Let's get to the Chargers. Why isn't Jim Harbaugh in the Coach of the Year discussion? Kevin O'Connell a couple years ago won. Didn't they win like 12 or 13 games? The year they lost to Daniel Jones in the first round of the playoffs. Last year, remember, they started slow, but then before Cousins had torn his Achilles, they were playing really well. Like, he's a high-level coach. Now, if he wins out and he wins the North, I got no problem voting for Kevin O'Connell. But, like, his team was really good with him as the coach before. Now, if you want to give him extra credit for Sam Darnold, okay. Who else? Dan Campbell? Yeah. Dan Campbell was in the NFC Championship game last year. So, Kevin O'Connell's been to the playoffs. Dan Campbell was in the NFC Championship game. Jim Harbaugh took over a franchise that Brandon Staley had literally lit on fire. Had burned it down to the fucking studs. The franchise was a joke. They went 5-12. They were like 2 spots away from like the Patriots and the Washington Commanders last year. People forget, they drafted 5th overall. The reason Joe Alt is on their team is because they drafted 5th overall. They drafted ahead of Brian Daboll and the Giants, who played the majority of the season last year with Tommy DeVito. Jim Harbaugh has taken over 2 NFL teams. The previous year, before he showed up, they combined for 6 and 5 wins, so 11 wins total. If he wins next week against the Raiders, newsflash, he's going to. He will have taken 2 teams that had won 11 games and won 24 combined games the next season. And the thing with the 49ers, turns out that team was loaded. They had Willis and Bowman, and offensive line was sweet. Frank Gore, Vernon Davis, Michael Crabtree. They had signed Carlos Rogers. Justin Smith was already on the team. They had drafted Aldon Smith. Ahmad Brooks was on the team. Like, they had fantastic players. Jim Harbaugh was like, Keenan Allen, one of the best wide receivers in the history of the franchise, we're trading you. Mike Williams, we're cutting you. Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. Joey, you've been injured nonstop. Khalil, it feels like you're a little overpaid right now. We're bringing you back, but we got to step up. Those 2 guys look awesome. He's leading receivers Ladd McConkey, who might end the season with like 85 receptions. Everyone's like, he's taking Malik Neighbors. He's like, absolutely not. I'm taking a right tackle because the offensive line is the tip of the spear. And his defenses are always good. No matter who he coaches, his defensive coordinator has changed over the years, but one thing is consistent, they're good. Jim Harbaugh has the Chargers a week away from winning 11 games. The Chargers were arguably the laughing stock of the league last year. Them and the Panthers. They lost a game to the Raiders where they lost like 70-10. And everyone got fired the next day. It was a Thursday night football game. I remember watching it because I was in Vegas that weekend, or that Thursday night. It's crazy what he's accomplished. And like the thing that he does, everywhere he goes, he's one of the great team builders we've ever seen. Because his number one characteristic that he looks for is like, are you tough physical guy? A lot of people talk about it. Every time a guy's hired in college or the pros, we want tough, physical people that bleed football. And then they draft like a corner or a wide receiver. It's like, no, you don't. You don't. Harbaugh lives what he preaches. And clearly the way he practices with kind of an older school mentality of running the football works. today looked like that was as if you just turn on like the Animal Planet and you watch like a apex predator, like a lion or a polar bear or like a killer whales when they hunt, and they just have the thing circled, and you're like, this gazelle is so done for. Like when a seal is like swimming away from those killer whales, and it's like they are gonna rip this thing to shreds. Or like when a gator comes out of the Nile, and grabs like a cheetah, just trying to get a couple sips of water in 190-degree temperature. And that gator grabs it and just starts twirling it around, and body parts are flying everywhere. That was Jim Harbaugh today stepping into Foxborough, looking at Gerard Mayo and that joke of an operation they're doing. And went, listen, I don't even know how many awesome players we have on this team. You can probably count it on one hand. Our quarterback, our left tackle, our right tackle. I mean, McConkey's our best offensive weapon. Khalil Mack's in year 11. Derwin James, who looked like he was washed last year because of Brandon Staley, who will just ruin careers, has Derwin James looking like Ronnie Lott today. We are going to absolutely undress everything your organization stands for in front of the entire nation because no one's doing anything but having the football game on in the morning. And it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And then they showed the graphic today of the trade Joe Ortiz made, where the Patriots traded back and they traded to the Chargers for basically, I don't know. The Chargers went from 37 to 34 to get Ladd McConkey. And either they flip flopped or something happened. Maybe they gave their third round pick and got an extra like fourth or something because they got Ladd McConkey, who has 77 catches and over 1,000 yards, and still the DB who has 4 interceptions. With the pick that the Patriots traded back for to pick 37, where the Chargers were sitting, they took Polk, the wide receiver from Washington, who most people thought was the worst of the group. Obviously, Rome was the best. A lot of people thought he was the worst. He has 12 catches this year. And they also drafted with pick 110, Javon Baker, who does not have a catch. I don't know if he's on injured reserve playing or not. I don't know. But the Patriots are an embarrassment. And that's what the Chargers were last year. They were that. Except they had Justin Herbert too. And they had Keenan Allen. They had Derwin James. They had these players. They would, some of them got injured a game or two, but like they played in games. And they couldn't operate. Brandon Staley looked like Gerard Mayo. He had no clue what he's doing. Now, no one thinks the Patriots should be a playoff team like Jim Harbaugh, but no one thought the Chargers were going to be a playoff team once Jim Harbaugh got there. It baffles my mind. One of my great regrets. I said it before the season. I'm like, how does this team not make the playoffs? And I let groupthink, you guys in my DMs, people texting me, listeners of the show, like, Middlekauff, you're crazy. They do not have the talent. And you're not wrong. It's like, who's he going to throw to? That's not a crazy question. And you know what the answer is? It doesn't fucking matter. Because if Jim Harbaugh's your coach, you're going to do a couple things. You're going to play defense. You're going to be able to run the ball. And your quarterback is going to be efficient. And it turns out Ladd McConkey's Wes Welker meets Julian Edelman and going to be a star in this league. And when J.K. Dobbins, it turns out, is like Walter Payton, because if, they have not been able to run the ball, and he comes back, boom, 4 yards a carry, 19 carry, 76 yards. But McConkey today, 8 for 94. Quentin Johnson, 5 for 50. Joshua Palmer, who had one of the most awesome stretched out catches you'll see, had 4 for 41. I mean, they're throwing to Stone Smart, Darius Davis, Will Dissly, Tucker Fisk, whose dad is Jason Fisk, who was a former defensive tackle for the Tennessee Titans in the Steve McNair, Eddie George days, whose half-brother, Chuck Bonneau, was a high school teammate of mine at Davis High School, who told a famous story about this when the Titans were really good and we were in high school. Again, his brother had gone to Stanford, was just a starting player for Jeff Fisher's defense with those Titans team, so he wore a Jason Fisk jersey to the Raider game They were playing the Titans on Monday Night Football. Again, this is his brother. I was like, at the time, I didn't quite understand, but I remember the next day at school, he said that he was going to get a Coca-Cola or something, right, during a break in the game, and he's wearing this Titans fist jersey at the Coliseum against the Raiders. This is like the heyday with John Gruden. And Callahan might have been the coach. It was like either 2000, 2001, 2002, somewhere in that range. And he looks up and he starts hearing Raiders, Raiders, and the escalator's going up by him. And the way he told the story, I remember being so funny. And he looks around, and every single Raider fan is staring at him in the line to get like a pretzel and a soda, and they're just chanting it as he's sitting there. And he thought he was going to get killed. Turns out he didn't, and I think the Titans probably won. But uh, yeah. So shout out to Tucker Fisk, who's that's the other thing with Jim Harbaugh. He takes these guys, they find a defensive lineman, he moves them to fullback, and the guy can like play both ways. In San Francisco, he did that with Bruce Miller, who played defensive lineman, I think for Central Florida in college, moved him to fullback, and he was a starting fullback for him for a couple years. They were going to NFC Championship games. Turns out the guy was kind of a scumbag, beat up an old guy at Fisherman's Wharf, ended up, I don't know what ended up happening to him. I remember one time where I used to work out in Walnut Creek. He was there meeting with his lawyer. So his career kind of got derailed. But before he beat up that old guy, he was a really good player. And listen, sometimes you do some crazy shit and you get caught up and career ends. But yeah, man, Jim Harbaugh, the guy's amazing. He really is. It's like, what? See, we can nitpick until we're blue in the face. But I just know Jim Harbaugh is unreal at his job. And for all the guys, and we'll see what Belichick looks like in college, who can just go back and forth? It's like Stanford winner, Niners winner, Michigan winner, now Chargers winner. Like he just goes back and forth. No one else can do that. Like you'd think like Mike Tomlin would be a good college coach. Maybe. Like maybe not. I don't know. Belichick, greatest coach of all time. We'll see how he does in North Carolina. I think he'll be good, but time will tell. You know for a 100% fact, if you hire Jim Harbaugh, your team will have a winning record. You will win. You will be in the college football playoffs. You will be in the NFL playoffs. That is a fact. That is a one. Looking back, it's insane. 2 years ago, remember he wanted the Minnesota Vikings job. Maybe it was 3. They ended up going with Kevin O'Connell. Right move. But like everyone else should have been interested in him. 2 years ago, he sniffed around like people could have had him. This year it was clear. He's like, I'm coming to the pros. I'm taking my backpack. I'm taking my little son, Jack. Taking my dad, Jack, if he'll come with me. I think he's still in Ann Arbor. Anyone who wants to come, we're going to the pros. It was like the Chargers were aggressive. Where were all these other fucking teams? The Bears literally drafted Jim Harbaugh in the late 80s. They're like, no, you know what? We're going to keep Matt Eberflus. Like, guys, it's been reported he would have been interested in the Bears job. Like, this isn't hindsight or, looking back Monday morning quarterback. We knew before he got this job, Jim Harbaugh wins everywhere he goes. And now we just, know it more. But, him against Gerard Mayo is like an 18-year-old playing one-on-one against, a 6-year-old. It was a fucking joke. I was on the treadmill trying to get a little sweat in. Just this is this real? It's crazy. I was trying to equate what it has to feel like to be a Patriot fan post Brady. I was thinking if you were a billionaire, how great your life is. I'm not saying you're always happy or whatever, but you just everything's yours. It's this is just you're just on easy street. You want this, you got that, you can do this. Your kids want to go there, send them to the best schools. You just have no object when it comes to money, everything. And be one day you wake up and everything's gone, and you got no money, and you got nothing. The Patriots were a multi-billionaire. It just didn't get any better. This is as good as it gets. It can't be this easy. And then one day it just ends. And now you're watching them. It's does it get any worse? So after days like today, you have to wonder if Gerard Mayo is safe, because you have these days where it's they drafted 3 last year, and now they're probably going to draft higher with the quarterback. I mean, last year, their quarterback situation. I also think this about Drake May is I've heard a lot of people talk about how talented he is, how good he is. I think him and Caleb, I do think Drake's a little more natural getting rid of the ball. Caleb has some just awful tendencies of holding onto the ball. But both of them make some sweet plays when they are getting curb stomped. When it's like, are we playing? I know we're playing an NFL game, but you're down like 3 scores in the third quarter. This might as well be preseason. They're playing prevent defense. No one's actually trying to do anything crazy here because when the game's in flux, now Drake made a couple. I'm not trying to diminish. Like, I like Drake May a lot, but I hear a lot of people like they've got their franchise court. Maybe based on what? A lot of plays made way down in these games. Definitely, Caleb's even worse. Every single Bears game, they're down, beside the ones they lose 6-3, they're down like 20-0, 24-0, 18-0, every single game. Obviously, these guys are. I think the way you have to judge both guys is like, yeah, they got big time physical traits. I like their physical traits, but to know that they can play good football, I saw more today. Bo Nix playing a playoff level game, huge plays, second half against Joe Burrow. I guess he's not technically playing Joe Burrow, but just a hostile environment outside in the cold. Like, all his snaps were meaningful. Every fucking snap he took today against the Bengals mattered a lot for the entire season, for playoffs, against his opponent, their playoff hopes. There was a lot on the line today. After the first couple drives of the game, and obviously he got KO'd because he gets hit in the head and then they bring him back in the game. None of it mattered. Like, none of it mattered. So I don't know what to tangibly, like, this guy's a franchise. I hope he is. But I hear that get thrown around a lot, especially with Caleb. Like, I still believe in, based on what? Like an awesome drive throw in a game that's 30-7? Like, I don't know. Like, yeah, he's got a big arm. I knew that when he was 17 years old, watching him on high school tape before he went to Oklahoma. Yeah, Drake's a big time athlete. He can move around. Like, yeah, it's exciting. But none of these plays mean anything in the context of the actual game besides, like, yeah, this guy's talented. So I kind of struggle with that. I will end on this. Uh, I props to Deion. Now, I would say it's a little crazy. I get they have insurance policies, but Shedeur and Travis, I look up, there's less than 4 minutes in the game. Shedeur's in there. Travis is in there. I love it simply because for years, the media yearned for these players, like, just transfer, pay them. It's like, yeah, and I wasn't against any of it, but they just never shut up about it. And then Deion comes, who's like, I say this all the time, for this guy that's really like progressive with their Twitter, Instagram videos, he coaches very old school. Like, they full pad practice during the season, during spring ball. Like, he gets after it today. And he said it from the moment, my guys are going to play. I mean, they very well could go number 1 and number 2 overall. I'm looking up, Shedeur's getting crushed. I get it's a little different. It's his son. It's an incredible moment coaching his son. How fucking awesome that is. Like, I have a soft spot for that. Any dad, father, son moment, like, that's really cool. But from a business standpoint, yeah, it is kind of crazy. But I also, in a weird way, root for it because I love how torn the media is over this. Like, what do we say? Like, they love Cam Ward. Like, throwing an FU to the system. Yeah. Did he? Like, he just quit at halftime. I get he's chasing some record. Ultimately, I don't. Non-bowl game that is a playoff game, I have none of it matters. Like, that Colorado game against BYU, none of it matters. That Miami game against Iowa State, none of it matters. These games, now, I enjoy it. Like, I had the game on, but I don't have any takeaways. It means nothing to me. You want to play? You want to quit at halftime? Do whatever the fuck you want to do. I do not care. But, like, is a little weird. I guess Malik Neighbors did it. Yeah, I mean, all this stuff. It's just a lawless environment. I guess, this is what we rooted for, but Deion wasn't playing that. Like, there was no quitting at halftime for Deion, which, has got to be torn. A lot of his supporters were probably pretty mad, like, pull Shedeur out of the game. Ugh, so angry. It's like, and in a weird way, I thought it was kind of crazy. I'm like, what if? And then the last play, Shedeur gets run down, but Deion doesn't give a shit. Does it his way, which I really, really appreciate. The only takeaway I had from the Miami game is that Mario Cristobal always loses important games. He's up late in the game. Of course he loses. Mario Cristobal is just not a good football coach. He really is not. He's a great recruiter. Well, what does that mean? Before the NIL, it meant that he was at Oregon and he coached at Alabama. He had access to money and he could pay players. Most good recruiters are at big time schools pre NIL that were paying guys under the table, which I was totally for. I'm not against it. I'm not acting, but like there aren't good recruiters where brown bags of cash are not involved. I'm sorry. And now he's at Miami, who has some money, and he can buy some players, and he plays in a shitty conference. I just don't think he's any good. I do. He can spot talent, and he left the cupboard pretty full for Dan Lanning at Oregon. But he is a bad football coach. Schematically, I don't think he brings much to the table besides like run the ball to his offensive coordinator. But he always loses these games where he is winning in them. And today, whether Cam Ward was playing the backup, I don't care. He had a lead late in the game, and of course, he lost because Mario Cristobal loses a lot when you think he's going to win. If you ever watch, you're like, Mario's going to win this game, I live bet the other team immediately because that's usually what happens. So, so many takes are like, Cam Ward, Cam Ward. It doesn't matter. And here's what no one in the NFL will care. And some people in the NFL probably watch it thinking like, why is Travis Hunter in this game? But like I said, I was rooting for Deion because I think he's just so counter the movement. And anytime you're counter the movement, especially as aggressive as he is, when nobody's doing it, and everyone kind of wishes they could, it's just refreshing to me for whatever reason. Adios. Have a good night. See you tomorrow.